Hello, welcome to the Research.gov updates for the National Science Foundation. My name is Stephanie Yee, and I'm one of the project managers here at NSF. I primarily work with FastLane, Research.gov, and Grants.gov integration, and I work on the operations and maintenance for NSF. My contact information is here in case you have some future questions that you would like to contact me with. So for today's agenda, I'm going to go over very briefly the FastLane decommissioning update and where we are with that. I'll also go over some recent updates for NSF proposal preparation and our Research.gov system. I'll go over a brief demo on the system and how to prepare a proposal and some of the recent enhancements and updates we've made for that. I'll go over very briefly for Grants.gov updates, so this will be important or relevant to people who use Grants.gov or any of the system-to-system applications for that. I'll go over some highlights on how to check your status for submitted proposals, and then I'll talk about non-proposal items such as awards and reporting functions and account management. And I'll wrap this up by giving you some resources and contacts for questions. So now I'm going to talk about the FastLane decommissioning updates. So FastLane proposal preparation has been with us and has been finally turned off on September 30th of 2023 after 29 years of service. So that was a pretty long time. But FastLane.gov, NSF.gov has many functionalities in it outside of proposal submission. So there's a lot of functionality that you may wonder what has happened to it or where its new home is. So this is a new page that we have put on the help on Research.gov. And this is a snapshot on the right-hand side of, on a high level what it looks like. So on this page is a very good page to bookmark where you can get up-to-date information about modules, the decommissioning timelines for those, and where the functionality is. So as you can see here, we update this pretty frequently. Whenever we have a major system update, we do keep this up to date. So in the slide, you do have links that will take you directly to this page. The last bullet here is just a mention. We are introducing to NSF an update to our proposal review evaluation tools. So these are more relevant for people who are out there that are reviewers for NSF. We will be changing that system as well. So on FastLane, you might wonder, well, what is still operating over there? And we do have two major functionalities or two major modules that's still operating under the FastLane umbrella. So that is proposal review and panelist functions. So most of our business is to make sure there's external reviews, and that functionality is still there. However, we have changed how you access that. So as of September 30th, we've moved these two links to the homepage of Research.gov. So this is hopefully, getting everyone used to the front door of Research.gov to get to anything that you need to do with NSF. So these two links here, very high level in red, in the red boxes, these are the links you can see. I know it's really small, but when you open the page, you're going to see a little blue F icon that indicates that it is over in the FastLane application. Reviewers at this time, or ad hoc reviewers, don't need an NSF ID to access these in particular. They will basically be links here that takes you to those special login pages. Eventually, these will require NSF IDs, but as of now, these are just direct links. Now I'm going to talk about NSF proposal preparation and some of the updates there. So now I'm going to go into the NSF approved format for biographical sketch and current and pending other support. So we had a pretty major change recently. As of October 23rd, 2023, the use of science CV is mandatory. So what this means is prior to October 23rd, you actually had two ways to complete these documents. You had these NIH Science CV application, or you can use the NSF fillable PDF. So these are PDFs that you could download from NSF and fill them in. That is no longer available, and you can only use the Science CV formats. Here on this slide, we do have links to the relevant sections in the PAPG in case you want to know more. But for both Research.gov and Grants.gov, we will only be accepting Science CV versions. If for some reason you were working on a proposal prior to October 23rd, but you are planning to submit after October 23rd and you're still working on that proposal, any uploaded versions of the fillable PDFs, that will be, you can submit that proposal, but if you make changes to that section, you remove the file and you re-upload something, it must be in the Science CV format. This also applies to any revisions you make. So if you have a submitted proposal and now you're making a proposal file update, for example, those would have to be in the Science CV format. The bottom here is just some notes, visual indicators of whether or not you're using the right form. One of the easiest way to know is to open the document and look at the properties. If the title starts with BGS 23-1 or CPOS 23-1, then that is the Science CV version. Anything other than that will not be accepted. This slide here is a very useful resource to take a look at video tutorials on how to use Science CV. I highly recommend that people take a look at this, especially if you are new to Science CV. These are pretty good tutorials. Now I'm going to talk about time zone. So I hope all of you know, or if you don't know, just a reminder that most of the solicitations here at NSF with a deadline are based on a 5 p.m. time. So this means this is your organization, the submitting organization's time zone. It is not your person where you are located's time zone. It is the organization's time zone. So if you are physically located in California, but you work for an institution that is on the East Coast, your proposal deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern time. So before, there was not an easy way to know which time zone that you are affiliated with and what you're submitting against. So we've added a new field called time zone within your contact information. So when you log into Research.gov, and there's a link on the upper right-hand corner called My Profile, when you click on that, you will have a list of all the affiliations that you have, the organizations that you work for or have roles for. So if you have more than one organization, you can click on that particular organization. And if you're submitting a proposal under that organization, you'll be able to see the time zone that they have set for that organization. You cannot change this. This is something that was set when the organization was registered with NSF. So if there's any issues of what you're seeing here, please call our IT Help Central. This is a screenshot. It's slightly different. This is for people who are applying as fellows. So most applications come through NSF as part of an organization, but we do have solicitations, especially postdoctoral fellows. They are applying as individuals. So these are individual people, so they also have a time zone. So when you first register as a fellow, as an individual, you do register with an address and you do select a time zone when you first register as a fellow, as an individual. One thing to note for these applicants is that it's a little different because there's no SAM registration involved with an individual. When you set up your address, your time zone, the very first time, if you're a fellow and you're returning, let's say you move, and the next year you apply for a fellowship, the address and time zone we have for you is what you originally registered with. This is something we do plan to make easier in the future for a fellow to update this information. But for now, this is something that you would have to call IT Help Central to help you change. So this is a sample of a cover sheet for a fellow. And if you're wondering, what address does NSF think I have and what time zone am I going to use? It's going to be under this red box. So if you open your cover sheet, take a look at the address of awardee organization. This is the address, and this is the time zone that we'll be using. So next, I'm going to talk about demo. I'm going to show you a demo of the recent enhancements for proposal preparation. In addition to just walking you through of how to create a basic proposal, I will highlight some of the recent functionalities that we've put into place, and hopefully this will be very useful for you to take a look. So I'm going to go ahead and pause, and I'm going to switch over to a browser, and we can look at some of the recent enhancements we've made. All right, so I'm here on Research.gov production, and I'm logged in as myself already. I have multiple roles. I am a PI, so I have the PI buttons and links available to me. I always make sure that people do read your notifications. As you can see here, there's some red, there's some yellow, but if you click here, you can click on Show All Notifications. This is just a useful place for you to look to see all the notifications, the advisories that we have. This is important because there are outages usually every week in terms of maintenance. So just double check here to make sure that you are not impacted. I'm going to go ahead and hide these notifications and just go ahead and go to proposals. So if you have an NSF ID, but you're not a PI and you just want to maybe test some files or do some training, everybody has access to the demo site. So this is a link here. As you can see in parentheses, it says training. So this is a safe way for people to look around in the system and see and prepare what they can. But for my purposes, I'm going to go ahead and submit or click on prepare and submit proposals. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click and prepare a basic full proposal. Now, this modal popped up for me because I have actually two roles. I have a PI role for an organization, and I'm a fellow. So as I mentioned before, fellows are individuals, so they have a different role in this dropdown. But for most people, they are applying as part of an organization. So you're taken to a prepare new full proposal wizard. You have 4 basic steps here. And the first step is to select a funding opportunity. So this is a list that will only show you, of course, non and expired funding opportunities, things that are coming up. And you can find these by typing in a number, or you can type in words. I'm going to go ahead and just select a random solicitation and just show you how this works. On step 2 is where to apply. So this basically means what directorate, division, and program this proposal is going to. If you're responding to a solicitation, most of the times this page right here, you wouldn't have any other options. It's only going to one program specifically. So for most of you, there's nothing for you to do on this particular step. But for some solicitations, which are more open, or maybe there's more than one program, more than one division, you will have drop-down boxes here and you'll be able to select those. Now on step 3, this is where I'll select my proposal type. We have a list here of all the proposal types that you can choose from, and we're not going to show you a proposal type that you can't select. So for example, down here, I'm unable to select these. But for most proposals, you will select research proposal type. One thing to note, though, is that if you do select one of these other specialty types, there are different requirements for those. So if you're selecting equipment or conference, you might encounter different compliance checks. So just make sure you are selecting what you need to. When I click next, I'm on step 4. This is information about proposal details. So are you submitting a single proposal with or without subawards, or are you submitting separately as a set? So if you're submitting separately as a set, you do have to choose at this point if you're going to be a lead or non-lead. And they have different titles and different requirements. But I'm going to make this simple and say this is a single proposal. Once I click Prepare Proposal, I'll be taken to my temporary proposal. So this is a temporary ID. This is not going to be your final proposal number. Everything I selected in the wizard is up here. So my title is something I can change. If I don't like this, I can change the number here. One thing to note is if you highlight this whole thing, the field actually disappears. So if you are editing the title and you need to change it, use your keyboard to update the title. So funding opportunity is set. So once you select the funding opportunity, you can't change it again. So that is on purpose. The whole power of this application is that each section has compliance rules based on the funding opportunity you select. So unfortunately, we can't allow you to change this whenever you like, because you might have already uploaded a lot of files in each of those sections, and then the compliance rules will not be valid anymore. So in order to keep the compliance checks meaningful, we don't want you to change the funding opportunity once you start. The other thing is where to apply. So if you remembered on my step 2 in the wizard, I had a set program that this proposal is going to. You can add others. So I'm going to just quickly show you how that works. So I just click on that link, manage to apply. And here you see over here is where this proposal is going to. If your proposal crosses disciplines, or maybe you would like to have a co-review, you can select multiple or different directorates that your proposal should be or can be considered. One thing I do want to note is that this is a request. It is not a guarantee. So here I'm just going to go ahead and select a random program and click Add to Save. And as you can see, now I have a new program added on the right-hand side. I'm going to go ahead and add another one. And it's added to the right-hand side. So let's say the program I selected for place number 3 is higher priority than place number 2. I can use these arrows over here to move them up and down. But if you notice, I cannot move anything higher than place number 1, because that is where the proposal is going. That is where the solicitation is written for. So that is not something you can override. This is where the proposal is going. And I mentioned this is a request, not a guarantee, because what this actually does is it takes anything that you add over here as place number 2, 3, or 4, and it places that on the cover sheet. So that is a signal for the program officer who's receiving this proposal that, hey, this is some other programs I would like this proposal to be reviewed or take a look at, or this is where my proposal also applies to. So it's up to the discretion of the program officer on what to do with that information. But ultimately it only goes to the program officer that's listed in place number 1. I'm gonna go ahead and click Save and Apply. And as you can see, I now have my 3 up here. The other things I want to draw your attention to is just the orientation of this page. So I'm going to just make it a little smaller so you can see the page and its sections. On the upper right-hand corner is your due date. So not all solicitations have due dates. Some are anytime proposals, but you have to select a date. I'll go ahead and select this, and this is a window. Of these sections here, we have proposal actions. This is your left-hand side buttons. These are where you can move your proposal along or do things to the proposal. And here are your sections. So it's broken up by 2 sections, required and optional. And for the system, we are checking to make sure every section here has something in it. I want to go over to the proposal actions and just really quickly go over some of the new things we've added here. So we've added a new button here, and it is called Check Errors and Warnings. So this is new because we do realize that other than the PI, of course, you may have other people at your organization working on your proposal. So they're not officially listed on the proposal, but they are helping you put this proposal together. So what we found is those helpers, or those other authorized users, were not able to see the errors and warning messages for the sections. So I'm going to click on this button. This is helpful for any roles. You click on here and you get a really quick, concise page that tells you everything that needs to be corrected and things that may need a second look at. So here, I'm going to make it a little bigger now. The things that have the red exclamation point with the circle, these are errors. That means you are prevented from submitting the proposal until you correct these. And then down here, these are your warnings. So warnings have a triangle with a exclamation point in it, and it's yellow. So this is just a warning saying you may want to address this, but it will not stop submission. So hopefully this is very useful for people who are working on proposals that are not PIs. All right, I'm going to go ahead and really quickly go over managed personnel and subaward organizations. This is where you will entering your people. So I'm going to go ahead and click Manage Personnel. So by default, only the PI can create the proposal. And you might see there's new text here. So we've added remove change role, and well, remove from proposal is always here, but now we have something called change role. So this is useful for people who may need to elevate someone who is a co-PI to a PI. So here I can add co-PIs. I'll just go ahead and add my friends. And as I search for co-PIs, the only people or only results I will see are people who have valid PI roles. So if you're searching for a colleague that you want to add to proposal and you enter their NSF ID or their email address and they don't show up, a couple things that may have happened. One is they don't have a PI role. Maybe they're in the system, or maybe they haven't requested their role yet. It is not just requested a role. They have to request a role from their organization, and that administrator has to approve it. So there's a couple of things that needs to happen before a name shows up here for you to select. So I'll go ahead and select Alan. And now I have two co-PIs on here, and I'm not going to do it because I will, I don't want to change this proposal right now, but here I have a link called change role. I'm going to go ahead and click that. And now this modal comes up. And here, what it's going to do is look for anyone else on the proposal who's also a PI. So in this case, only Alan is the PI that's on this proposal. I have the choice to now assign him as the prime PI and change role. If you have senior personnel, you cannot use this functionality. You have to remove that senior personnel first from the proposal and re-add them as a co-PI, and then you can swap places. So that's the new functionality we have. We're hoping that will help a lot of people who initiate proposals on behalf of others. And this is an easy way for you to switch people around. I want to highlight the other authorized users. So I mentioned this. There are people who help you prepare the proposal. These are people that are not officially listed on the proposal, but they do have edit rights. So here is the same situation. They need to have an other authorized user role for the organization. They can't just be anybody with the NSF ID, and you can add them by NSF ID or email address. One thing to note is that as you add people to this page, one thing I make sure I tell people at conferences is that you can't have people who have identical first names and last names. So that is a challenge for people who want to grant access to senior personnel. So if I wanted to add Alan, for example, as a senior personnel, but I also want Alan to see and work on the proposal, unfortunately, senior personnel does not have privileges to view the proposal, but other authorized users can. So one thing I recommend, if you do have a need to add senior personnel and also have them view the proposal, I recommend adding them by name as senior personnel. So this is and then adding Alan as other authorized user. All right, so that's a good workaround if you needed to do that. All right, so really quickly, because there are some of you who are brand new to NSF, these sections are pretty straightforward. I'll just peek into cover sheet. Cover sheet is unlike the other sections. They're actual form fields where you need to select things like requested start date, your proposal duration. I always recommend that people look at the solicitation to make sure what they are entering is what they need. I do want to highlight this section down here. These are what I call our other information checkboxes. Just be mindful of these. Sometimes when you click on these, other questions pop up. And as you select questions, even more fields will pop up. So just be mindful of that. You may have to save the form first, and then you will be presented with other options to upload or enter data. I'll go ahead and leave this page, and I'm not going to save anything. I'm going to jump into project description. So project description is very similar to some of the other sections, but I would say this is one of the more complex sections. It's your largest section of the proposal. It has a lot of checks to it. So project description, most proposals at NSF have compliance rules that is against the PAPG. So most of the time, this is limited to 15 pages. But of course, other solicitations may have fewer than that or more pages than that that's allowable. So there are things that we are checking and we are not checking on this page. So we have some instructions here of things that you need to make sure your document has, but the system itself, for example, is not checking at this point, so it's November 2023, margins and fonts. So we used to check for these, but we did encounter some issues where people with even different versions of software were having issues with that. So we have temporarily suppressed those, and we will revisit and reintroduce those checks in the future. But as of now, those are suppressed. But you are still beholden to the requirements in the PAPG. And so there's a handy dandy link here that will take you not only to the PAPG, but to the section that you're in. We are checking for, you must have a separate section header for broader impacts. So what this means for you is it needs to be broader impacts. It needs to be by itself. It should not have any other text with it. A header is broader impacts with no other text. Some things I'm seeing where people are not able to pass this error is that broader impacts is misspelled, or broader impacts has too many characters on each side. So be careful if you're using Roman numerals. If you are centering broader impacts, you might have special characters or hidden spaces on either side, which will count against you for additional text. Other issues I'm seeing are people who are LaTeX users. So we do have a community of people out there, mostly engineers or physics, mathematics. They use LaTeX. We do have a whole page of resources for you. It's in the help. But we do have resources, and it is in the presentation of where to get help if you're LaTeX users. The other thing we're checking for are URLs. So this is challenging because sometimes you can't see it very easily in the document. So be mindful of any text that looks like URLs. So this means any text that starts with HTTP or www will be flagged as a document that contains a URL. Be careful of images. So sometimes images have hidden links inside of them. So be careful if you're copying an image from a publication, for example, it might have hidden links inside. The other thing I'm seeing are citations. A lot of people are using third-party citations tools to manage citations. Sometimes those have hidden links to the citation itself. So just be mindful of those. So because of all those checks, those are things that might surprise you that we are flagging. So I highly recommend, even if you have a very rough draft of your project description, check for the compliance of that document frequently. You don't want to be in a situation where you work on this document offline and you don't bother testing, uploading it to the very last moment, and then you realize you have to go hunting around for URLs or look for other things that are not going to pass on this page. All right. And I'm going to quickly go into budget because that is another more unique section in the proposal preparation. It is pretty straightforward, I believe. One thing I do like to share with people is a lot of people complain it's too narrow. One thing you can do is hide the left-hand menu. So I'm going to click here, and you can make this a little larger. By default, you only have year one, and then you have buttons here that will go ahead and add years. You can copy years, so we hope this is very useful to people. One common question I get about is, what if my personnel is not getting a salary? how do I manage that, and how do they get their documents within the system? So one thing that I would like to explain is your budget is independent of what personnel you have on the proposal. By default, anytime you add a senior personnel, they're added under here, under section A, senior personnel. So everyone is listed here by default. If for some reason you know your people are not taking a salary, you can remove them from the budget. So I'm going to go ahead and remove Alan. He's gone from all years of my proposal, and I can move on with my life. But Alan is not gone from us completely. He is required, of course, to have senior personnel documents. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save, just so I can go past this page. The other wonderful parts about this is if you were a FastLane user, this is a lot more dynamic as you type in. It will add up everything for you. One common question I get is there a vision to have some sort of offline document that people can work on the budget outside of the system and upload it? The answer is no. At this time, we have no plans of providing some sort of offline document. This was something that was available in FastLane. The reason is we want people to use this form. There's a lot of validations that's built into this form that is valuable, and you won't get that with an offline form. So there's no plans to do that. Go ahead and leave this page. And since the budget is something I did change, the other sections I didn't upload a document, just be looking out for the last updated column here. So this is a good way for you to visually look at this page to see what sections I have completed and what sections I need help with. So as you start uploading and completing these sections, you should be looking at the compliance status. What you want to see is green checkboxes that say no issues found. All right. Some other things I want to touch upon are the senior personnel documents. As I mentioned earlier, we have changed what formats we do accept. So if you expand all or collapse all, this is a nice way for you to manage all your people and all the documents that you have. So if you remembered, I removed Alan from my budget, but he is not gone forever for us. He's under here. He's under senior personnel documents. So he still needs all the documents that's required. So you need a biographical sketch, current and pending support document, NIH Science CV version, of course, and then the collaborators and other affiliation document. This is a unique document. This is one of the only sections that does not require a PDF. This is what we're expecting as an Excel document. You can get the template here. This is an Excel. You have to fill out this document. One tip I do want people to take away is that you should not be modifying this document in Google Sheets or something other than Microsoft. So unfortunately, there's a lot of logic built into each of the tables, and we rely on that logic to extract and save those values. Let's see if I can open this really quickly. And I'm going to go over some of the issues that we see in the Excel document. So I'll go ahead and open this really quickly. I do want to highlight. You'll see a whole lot of instructions here. Please read it carefully. We did spend a lot of time writing these instructions. One tip is don't delete the instructions. What I find is when people do that, they accidentally modify the template, and then it becomes unusable when you upload it. So just leave it blank. It doesn't show up later in your proposal. We only extract the data that you put in the tables. So if you notice, some of these tables do have little drop downs. So that's why, we want to, preserve that, these drop downs and the values. I just want to bring your attention to last active. So this is a date field. It is very sensitive to date formats. So please ensure that it is in a numerical month, day, and year. Be careful, make sure it is not malformed. Don't put in a year that's like 22,000 instead of 2016. So make sure it is a date. If you don't have a date, let's say you still have interactions with that person, just leave it blank. All right, I'm gonna go back here. And the rest of the sections are pretty straightforward. I do want to touch upon optional sections. So read your solicitation very carefully. You might have a lot of sections or a lot of documents expected in other supplemental documents. So this is a common section that a lot of the solicitations use to capture some of the documents and requirements that are specific to a solicitation. It is I would say a more generic section, meaning we are not checking as much as some of the other sections. You can upload multiple documents here. The only restriction you have is they must be PDFs. Not to be confused with single copy documents. So single copy document is a term here at NSF that we use that just means this is not a document that reviewers see. This is a private document that only NSF sees. So these are things that maybe you want to list people that you don't want to review your proposal, or you want to suggest people to look at your proposal. So this type of information is not for reviewers, it's for NSF to see and process. All right. And the last thing I want to show you, just really some highlights. If you need help, if you need to work through some of the error messages you're seeing in these sections, where do I go for help? So you might think it's this link, help, but it's actually an about. So click on about. You're going to have a list of all the Research.gov services here. Click on proposal preparation and submission and bookmark this page. This page is updated very frequently. We update it almost every release. This is where you can find your FastLane decommissioning page, for example. And over here on the left-hand side is just a huge pool of information of how to prepare the section. So this will go over not just a basic proposal, but things like collaborative proposals or preliminary proposals, or how to submit revisions to a submitted proposal. So this has everything you need in terms of preparing proposals. I would say the section that probably will give you the more information that you need in terms of uploading each section is uploading documents. So if you click here, you see all these questions. There are little pluses, and you can expand these all. And these are more, I would say, nitty-gritty details on how to bypass or fix some of the errors that you're seeing. So this is a really useful section for people to take a look at. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to showing you a new feature in our proposal budget revisions. But I will have to switch my screen here to a test environment and show you how that works. All right, so now I'm in a test environment. I'm logged in as a test person. This is all dummy data. It is not a real proposal. I am looking at a submitted proposal. So here is a submitted proposal. It's already here at NSF, but maybe I need to revise the budget. So this is a situation where the proposal is already reviewed, and maybe there's some last minute adjustments you need to do to the budget. You'll be requested by the program officer to do it. We have made a significant change on what you can change in a revised budget. So I am logged in as the PI for this proposal. Only the PI can initiate this. I can click on this, and this will reopen the same screen, has the same sections, but I will only be able to modify certain items. So now my page has updated. The title has changed to budget revision. I know I am working on a budget revision. I have the same buttons here. I'm gonna go ahead and make this a little larger. So one thing we've changed, so this, all the proposal sections are done. The only thing I can change in a budget revision are the budget itself, the budget justification, and a budget impact statement if that is applicable to you. Now we've made a change where you can add a subaward. So I'm gonna go ahead and click Manage Personnel. And as you can see, I now have the Add Subaward organization here. And this is where you'll be able to look for an organization. I highly recommend using UEI numbers. That's a little more precise. And you can select an organization. Now, one thing to note is that you can add subaward organizations, but you can't add people. That is on purpose. So as you can see, this is not clickable. That is because in a budget revision state, there's not a way for you to add additional documents. So remember, this is a proposal that's already submitted, it's already reviewed. There's only a certain amount of things and sections that you can change related to the budget. So we are now allowing subaward organizations, but not people, just because people has a lot more documents you need to upload for those, but that's not possible. All right, so those are the recent changes that we have made on Research.gov. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the presentation. All right, so we are finished with our demo, and I'll go ahead and finish the rest of the presentation to give you some updates for everything else. So for Grants.gov proposal submissions, we have updated and posted a new information page for Grants.gov submitters. So this is something, as you can see, we posted it in the summer. This is a great, useful resource for people who are using Grants.gov workspace, or they're using system to system. So this is a detailed page that kind of explains some of the checks we are doing, which are new since we've now migrated to Research.gov. We are now recommending officially that you should at least submit your system to system or Grants.gov proposal at least 5 business days before the deadline. The reason is that there may be some corrections that you need to do, and those corrections sometimes need to be done in Research.gov. As a proposal is submitted, we are doing a series of pre-checks and post-checks. If it fails a pre-check, you need to submit that proposal again in Grants.gov or the system to system. If it fails a post-check, that means it failed an NSF rule or a compliance check. And in that case, you might have to correct that in Research.gov. So you may have to go into 2 systems to prepare your proposal. And in order to allow you to do that, there's a lot of back and forth. That's why we're recommending that you submit this at least 5 business days. There are some limitations in Grants.gov. Some of these may be familiar or may be new to you. There are some solicitations that are not supported in Grants.gov. So the major ones that come to mind are the PAPG 23-1, for example, that is not available in Grants.gov, and also some of the small business SBIR, STTR proposal solicitations are not available in Grants.gov. Some other submission types, such as letters of intent, prelim proposals, those are not available as well. And also, if you are submitting as a set, you are not able to use Grants.gov. The bottom down here are things that you can start in Grants.gov, but you have to finish in Research.gov. So these are solicitations that might have unique requirements. So these are just some samples, but an easy one is, for example, the DOE form. This is very specific to education. They have a specific form that is unique to that program, and it's only available in Research.gov. So you create their proposal, submit it in Grants.gov, but you have to complete that form in Research.gov. And the last one's important too. Proposals with subawards need to complete their proposal in Research.gov. This is a graphical representation on the journey your Grants.gov proposal goes through before it goes to NSF. So this is just a visual indicator to let you know there's a lot of steps that happens before it comes to NSF. You will receive a minimum of 4 emails as it progresses through this flow before your proposal is accepted at NSF. So the story here is if you received just 1 of these emails, it is not here at NSF. You would at least receive 4. The next couple of slides, I'm just going to go very briefly. These are the descriptions of the emails you'll get. All right, the next section I'm going to talk about is how to check your proposal status. This is really important for anybody if you're using Research.gov, Grants.gov, or anything else. In the proposal section, there is a link called Proposal Status. This will give you the status of any proposals you've submitted, regardless of which system you've used. FastLane, Research.gov, Grants.gov, you will see it here. Your proposal is not here at NSF unless it is in this list and it has a proposal ID. So I highly recommend that within 24 hours of submitting a proposal, please check here to see if your proposal is there. If it is not there, then something has gone wrong. So this is your indicator to call IT Help Central to make sure that that is corrected. So the next portion, I'm going to talk a little bit about awards and reporting functions. These are just some other services that Research.gov has. We have been moving these links around, so I just wanted to highlight to people where these are. So we've been focusing a lot on proposals, but there's a lot of other boxes here, especially awards and reporting. Under awards and reporting, this is where you would find what you can do after you receive your award. Some of the most frequently used links, of course, are project reports. Most awards at NSF does have an annual project report and an outcome report requirement, and this is where you would access those. There's also a lot of notifications and requests. So these are things that you might have to officially notify NSF. Some examples are maybe you're changing a PI. This is where you would do that. The other one is supplemental funding requests. So this is a situation where you may need additional funding. So an example is career life balance. Maybe someone needs to take family leave and you need to have additional funding to accommodate, someone to replace that. You can do that here. The last box here is a special link. I call this the public access repository link. It's a quick link to deposit publications, for example. Typically, people can do that through a natural workflow in project reporting, but this is for people who may want to report a publication outside of the reporting period, or even after your award is closed. This is how you can add products to your award. So this is just a highlight of all the project reports. Of course, you have annual, interim, final project outcome reports. And then I touch upon public access. So some updates for public access. We're now accepting a lot more products outside of journals. So we are now accepting journal articles, conference papers, conference proceedings, data sets, and workshop reports. So a lot more items can be taken there. All right. So this is more information on the additional product types. And notifications requests. So we have moved all of our notifications requests to Research.gov, most recently change in PI or PI transfers. They are now in the Research.gov system. It is pretty newer than the rest. So just make sure any feedback that you have about these notifications and requests to please let NSF know. This is just a screenshot of supplemental funding requests. It looks and feels very much like a proposal preparation workflow. Next, I want to talk about Research.gov account management and reviewer integration. So this, a lot of buttons here, but at NSF, we're trying to make account management a little more streamlined and a little more meaningful to us. Many years ago, we had different profiles, whether you are a PI, a different account if you're a reviewer, or maybe a GRFP fellow. So, that's a lot of accounts to keep track of. We just want one single unique identity to identify you. If you're doing with business with NSF, we just want one ID. So we are in a multi-year effort to get all these accounts merged into one. And these are just some examples of types of people that do business with NSF, and we're trying to make that all into one. So what that means to you is as you click into Research.gov and you go to My Profile, you might see a little more, more sections are being added there as people start merging some of these roles there. So this slide is just to talk a little bit about reviewers. So if you're an administrator, you may not be a reviewer, but your PIs are reviewers. So a lot of PIs who do review business with NSF, either they're panelists or maybe they're ad hoc reviewers, we are now merging those roles into their accounts. So if you're helping a PI and they're asking you questions, that just is something for you to be aware of, that they now have information about their review activity with NSF. So if you are a reviewer to NSF, you now must get an NSF ID from Research.gov in order to become a reviewer at NSF. This doesn't yet include ad hoc reviewers, but it will soon. Some other new things about account registration, we have been adding more and more questions to it. So if you have a Research.gov account 5 years ago and you log in today, you're going to see a lot more information and questions for your profile. So for example, we've added a new gender response option and more information about your affiliations. So the next slide are your resources. There's a lot of links here. I highly encourage you to click on those and take a look at that. But I do recommend people to subscribe at least to our listserv. So you send a blank email to this email up top. Basically, we use this list to email any sort of major changes, including PEPG changes, and how that impacts you. So that's really important, one of our prime ways to get information out. This slide is important again. So these are our IT Help Central hours, our email and phone number. So that's at the top. And the second bullet here is for NIH. So if you have questions or concerns or issues with your science CV document generation, that is a separate help desk. So that is, they have also different hours. So just take a look at that. This is their information, and this is a link to create a ticket. Any policy-related questions to NSF, of course, please send to policy. And the rest of the presentation is the appendix, just additional screenshots, and I thank you for your time today.